Hello!
Oh,
Welcome back.
we're here. We're doing the Minagoroshi second recap.
It's
time.
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
For context, the last time we recorded was the 20th of March.
Oh God. Before
It is currently the 6th of September.
I remember. Oh my God, we were trying to get access to the recording studio before everything went to shit. I remember now. Oh, it's been that long.
It has been 170 days.
Yay.
Animal Crossing came out hours after we finished recording.
I hear it was very good.
And I've done nothing else since. Literally nothing. I've just been trapped in a basement with a Nintendo Switch and a medical drip.
Animal Crossing events. Look, I'm more of a Doom Eternal guy. I've been playing the heck out of some Doom games, you know.
God, they came out on the same day, didn't they? I'd completely forgotten.
That's why I was confused that you singled out Animal Crossing, because there was like it wasn't a war, it was more like a confederation between those two games. It was a bit weird.
It was more like a weird union.
Yeah, the trick was that like the main characters from each of the games would like buy each other's games.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very cute, because then you got like Isabel being like, I'd like one Doom Eternal, please. And then Doom guy, like, I would like to play Animal Crossing. That's his voice, by the way. I would like to play. Oi. But yeah, no. Anyway, it's been that long. It's been basically a century, but we're here now. And we're in the middle of recording Matsuribayashi.
Yes.
Which is longer than the hills are old. And we've come back.
We have.
And boy, what a ride. Minagoroshi, like, I've been going over it again as it's been releasing. I forgot how like long it is. Like, there's a lot of just stuff.
It's not the longest one. I think Wananagashi still outpaces it. One of the interesting things going back over Minagoroshi for me, because that's always what these recaps are about, right? Is how things changed as we went back over it. Is that Minagoroshi, I think, is the new record holder for my opinion, changing the least.
Interesting. You still are just like, it's all right. Like, it's cool, but like, it's got a lot of problems,
I think the main thing for me is I kind of developed a bit of Stockholm Syndrome going back over Minagoroshi again.
Yeah.
Because I think my opinion of the quality and the writing and the pacing is pretty much the same as we said through the episodes, and there wasn't ever a point where I was like, I disagree with what I just said there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, I thought it was acceptably bad enough that I kind of have a feeling of nostalgia towards how clunky it is.
I mean, when I like went through reading it, with you, I don't feel like my opinion, and I'm having the same thing with Matsuribayashi, but we're not finished that yet. Like, I don't feel like my opinion of Minagoroshi has changed very much since the first time I watched the anime. And part of the reason for that is just that there aren't like in the murder mystery structure, right? Because this is a murder mystery ostensibly, maybe. We learn things, and our opinion of the events that have already happened changes. We like character motivations, and like we learn more about the situation. But Minagoroshi spends so much time explaining what exactly is going on at the current moment that I feel like a rewatch or a reread of the events, it doesn't really add a ton. Like, even Sumihiro Boshi, like, you can get, like, there is an irony to Sumihiro Boshi's ending in that it ends on such a positive note, but then you realize, oh wait, we still haven't, like, fixed everything.
Yep.
Whereas Minagoroshi says, aha, we got you, like, Rikushi gets you at the end, he's like, it's the bad ending still, just like the last arc, but now you know exactly what's going on. And there is some value there now that we, like, know the answers to going back to the previous arcs and be like, so this is what Takano meant when she said this, and this is why she hands out the manuals and da-da-da-da-da. But because there's a whole other arc left, like, we're not, like I'm not poring over Minagoroshi looking for hidden details.
No.
Because I feel like it's just there. It's everything you need to know about Minagoroshi is in Minagoroshi. I mean, maybe you have a similar idea.
I think what would have worked a lot better, and admittedly this would have undermined one of the key elements of this arc, but I think what would have worked a bit better for me is if Minagoroshi was actually 3 separate, like, mini arcs that kind of tied the gap over between 6 and 8.
Okay.
Like, you then lose the whole element of Rika being like, this is the one perfect world, and then things still go wrong at the end. But I think
I see what you mean.
each of the individual elements of, learning that you can break fate, and then actually solving Satoko's problems with the Child Consultation Center, and then the entire showdown at the end were 3 individual stories with a lot of potential, but slamming them all into the back of each other.
It hurts them.
I think in the last episode, I described it as like 2 jigsaw puzzles that didn't quite fit together, that he's like smashed.
Yeah.
And I think in that kind of lens, they still kind of would have been better as their own jigsaw puzzles that allowed to create a full picture and have some narrative between them, where like maybe the narrative goes from being Rika saying, this is the one perfect world, to saying like, oh my god, this is the other element to the perfect world, and if I can just achieve this in another life.
Well, that's sort of what happens at the end, of course, but yeah, sure. I get what you mean, but it would ruin, dare I say, this is a weird argument to make, but it would ruin the novelty of the 8-art structure. Because it's so neat right now. It's literally, you have 4 question arcs and 4 answer arcs, and like Arc 7 is just one like loop.
I just want to be entirely clear that I have absolutely no attachment to that. Absolutely none. If Ryukishi was just to come in here and drop us like 7.5 arcs and just number them the same way that like tech companies number their releases, where it's like version 7, then 9, then 13. It's like, God, what? No. What do you mean?
No.
I'd be fine with that.
Don't do that to me, Ryukishi. You're already confusing me enough.
Just don't do half seasons, Ryukishi, I swear to God.
I mean, we've already seen his kind of commitment to having each arc be like a number back in Arc 4. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I get what you're saying. Like, it's not a huge thing, but I do think that as Ryukishi's works have grown, like, there is a certain novelty to having that in each of his stories, although that might change with Kikonia. There was some unconfirmed stuff that there's only going to be 4 arcs total, but who knows? Maybe they're all going to be question arcs. There just are no answers. Who knows? Whatever. But the idea that like you can split each of his works kind of in half, like even Higanbana has the first and second night, or the Rose Gun Days has three years that it's spread up across, but that's a special case. It's his least conventional of all the works that he's written.
Of course, because Ryukishi is one known for sticking to conventions.
Of course. Conventional for Ryukishi, like as you may know, if you know anything about that story, it is the most grounded of any of his stories. But like I think actually something that he did do. Now that we've brought up the idea of like half seasons and 0.3s and 13s. He actually did a spin-off story, and you should not read this until after you've read at least Minagoroshi, probably the whole thing. But he wrote a sort of short series of manga episodes, and I don't want to spoil too much about them, but the idea is that there's this like family that are like, they go into their family house and they get like taken to another dimension where there's lots of weird demon shit. And Takano is there. That wasn't
the direction I was expecting that sentence to go through. I'm enthralled.
And it kind of ties into the broader meta-narrative of the When They Cry series, and that's something that I won't go into, but Takano is like just posited as like a character in this world.
Yeah.
Where like demons run amok, and she's like, this is how Takano would actually deal with demons if she was like in a world where they like really existed, truthfully. In physical form, to be clear. Or Shiro-sama exists.
In that version of reality, Mick Gordon did the Umineko soundtrack.
Yeah. So, exactly. So, it's all coming back around. So, maybe we should take a look at that at some point and do a podcast about it. But yeah, I like the idea of Ryukishi doing spin-offs and like interesting side stories and extra steps in the world building. Although I should also say, and this is another thing that maybe we should read some of these. The console arcs of Higurashi I know are infamous for like being either far too experimental or like not adding anything, and that's kind of what happens when Ryukishi he tries to like expand on the story, or when he gives his like Higurashi property to other writers. They say like, what can I add to the vast lore of Higurashi that's set in this one town? And usually it's just either batshit insane or like the most boring thing you could possibly come up with, because they're trying not to like shake up the canon too much. But anyway, my point is, I like what Ryukishi has done. I like that he's like constrained himself to 8 arcs. I think that's like an interesting challenge for him. And just seeing all this other stuff that exists in the Higurashi like broader universe and in the When They Cry universe, I appreciate. the way that he tries to execute Arc 7. And again, I think it's much better done in the anime, but the way that he like presents us with this huge insurmountable problem, the characters solve it, and then they're reminded of the plot right at the end.
Yeah.
You might say that should have been kind of sprinkled throughout the arc a little bit more cleanly, but I do like the structure.
I mean, listen, it's faithful to Ryukishi's original works.
It is. He loves that roller coaster.
There's a meant to be part of the current release of the game though from Manga Gamer, right? They're coming out
because it was arcs.
Yeah, because I thought it was 14 titles in all that were originally as part of that contract.
14 titles. I'm trying to think what that might be referring to because I think that's just Ho. I don't think that includes the console arcs. So I'm not going to be able to remember all of them off the top of my head, but essentially there's the 8 original arcs, there's Bus Stop, there's Outbreak, there's, I'm going to say Kamikanshi Hen, I think is what it's called. So what's that? That's 11. There's also the Ray arcs, and I know at least one of them is like the epilogue to the main story. So that's 12. If there's 14, I can't recall what the other 2 are. I think they might also be the other parts of the Ray arcs. The Ray arcs being part of what's called a fan disc. So they're short stories that Ryushi has written within the world. I think one of those includes the one where Rika washes a window with her butt. So that's probably number 13, and number 14 might be the beach episode. So I think that's the 14. I'm saying this off the top of my head, and if I've gotten all of that right, I'll be very impressed with myself.
I'd be very impressed with you as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Let me know in the comments if you're impressed with me. Anyway, point is, I'm pretty sure that's what the 14 arcs would cover if that number is correct. Because the console arcs are made by like other companies and other writers, and they're like only in Japanese. Like, there are plenty of like fan translations out there, but I feel like, I mean, I wouldn't really particularly want to see them ported over. They have a pretty mixed reception in the fandom overall, and even if like the Rika Butt arc is like, you know, pretty lambasted.
That's the official title.
Yeah, the Rika's Butt arc is like kind of lambasted as this like trashy, over the top nonsense sequence. It at least has a lot of precedent because Ryukishi wrote that sequence as originally as part of one of the earlier arcs of Higurashi, but then decided it was far too silly to be put into his works, so he made it into a fan disc, of course. So that's a whole thing. But yeah, no, I don't think they'd be bringing the console arcs over. If they do, that would imply they're also going to be translating the entirety of the console arc experience, which has been done by modders, actually. I believe over 07th Mod. They have a Discord. You can go over there if you want to get the, like, PlayStation, I'm going to say, I think there was a PlayStation 2 and a PlayStation 3 version, but just the PlayStation version of the game, and you could play it through with all the, like, decisions and things.
And voices and shit.
Yeah, voices and the PlayStation graphics, and, like, you know, do you give the doll to Mion or Rena? Do you go to this place or that place? Do you go with Shion to investigate the shed? Which
shout out to the team at 07th Mod. I'll put a link in the description and whatnot. Please do. Lovely team.
Please do. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on with the PlayStation version, but I would not expect, especially as the Steam version is called Higurashi no Nakikoro ni Ho, I would only expect it to have the arcs that are included in Ho. Which are the ones that I've mentioned already.
That's news to me, maybe. I don't know. It might have been explained to me before.
I mean, I have the Ho disc lying around here somewhere. I ordered that as soon as it came out.
Oh, you're telling me that you didn't actually remember it and you just picked up the disc and read it off?
No, definitely
you
not.
Lying scoundrel.
No. So first off, it's hidden somewhere within all the boxes of all the Higurashi merch that Epic has sent me, and also all the other Higurashi stuff that I own, all the DVDs and everything. Also, it's in Japanese, so I wouldn't be able to read that for the life of me. Like, there is no way that I would be able to just rattle off the arc names. Also, I did rattle off the arc names, just like the content. But yeah. But no, like, the Higurashi Ho was only released in Japanese, and though you can find some unofficial translations, which is what I did back when I was going to be putting on, I almost put on the Hinamizawa Bus Stop play at my, like, uni theater. My pitch didn't go through in the end, but I almost did. But back then, I used that person's translation. though it wasn't super good. So I won't put them on blast right now, but I'm sure you can find a translation online. Well, it's one of those things where, like, back then I was just looking for anything. And I was like, I need a translation. I want to read it.
Yeah.
But nowadays I'm like, this is all grammar, and like these Japanese words don't need to be here. It's very strange.
Now, Hertz, the other thing that you had to raise,
Oh yeah,
which you'd been teasing me with for a long time, but I don't know how much we'd mentioned it to the audience, was some manga gamer write-up about...
So it's an article about child abuse. So strap in, boys and girls. This is gonna be fun. So I'll link this in the description. It's an article by Kuryu, who I'm not sure who that is. I imagine there's someone who has worked on the translation of Higurashi.
Mm-hmm.
The name rings a bell. Shout out to Kuryu. But basically, this entire article is about child welfare in Japan and giving us kind of a broader context to what's going on in Minagoroshi. And it's why, funnily enough, I've come to understand Ryukishi's, the child consultation structure, where they go to the center and then they come back, and then they go to the center and then they come back. Like, I understood that from a structural point of view, but I'm getting a better picture of it now that I understand the history, that it's sort of paralleling. So basically, the problem was that post-World War II Japan had a lot of orphans. That's just spoilers for history. War creates lots of orphans. To the point that they created like a specific like division of police officers to run around rounding up war orphans wherever they might be and trying to bring them like into custody so that they could look after them and find them families. And the number one thing that Japan was saying, their like rhetoric, was that a child can only be brought up if they have a family. That was like the thing that they stood by the entire way through this. How many years was it? 30 years of legislation they tried to put through to actually reinforce this.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it was very messy. The problem was, and this is why I say that he's like, they went to the center, they went back, they went to the center, they went back, kind of parallels Japan's approach to trying to fix this like orphan problem.
Yeah.
Because there were just kids everywhere. They were like causing vandalism to occur, and they were like dead babies in lockers. Like, it's messed up stuff. But basically, they didn't understand the fundamental issue of like getting people back into homes that actually wanted them. So they made a piece of legislation that said, a consultation center, can take children on to like look after them, but it only should be temporary. It should be a very short-term thing. And as soon as you find a family for them to go through, you should ship them out. And then the abuse, calls started to come in of like, this like child has like a black eye. They're not coming into school. Like, I don't know what's going on, but they're clearly not in a good family. So then they put in some legislation saying, yep, you can take the kid away from the family. But then they doubled back and said it should only happen in the most severe circumstances. Because remember, the most important thing for a child is that they have a family. And so this went back and forth for like 30 years of like every 1 or 2 years or 3 years, like putting forward another law, another piece of legislation to refine this idea of like, well, we want them to like be in a family, but not if the family's going to hurt them. But it wasn't a human rights issue at the time. Like, basically they just kept going back and forth between the deliberation table and actually like visiting practical results. It wasn't until like, let me see if I can find the year here. 1981, which is 2 years before Higurashi takes place, that centers had any real examples of how to handle abuse cases. I'm just reading from the article here. They had the 13th collection of case studies in 1981, and the idea, the people who put this case together focused on the fact that there were many difficult cases involving physical abuse by guardians, child support refusal, and single-parent families. And there was also a big problem with sex trafficking, which was great. Like, literally, this is 1981. This is like 40 years like after World War II, and they're still having the same problems because what they're trying to handle with this legislation is just not going through at all. And I don't know. That's kind of the backdrop to Satoko's issues in Minagoroshi. And it's why Ryukishi like why he's decided on this structure of like going back and forth, because those deliberations with the child consultation center in the story directly mirror the attempts to like change legislation through the years, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's bad.
I mean, that's always one of the struggles, and I mean, admittedly, coming in with little to no qualification on the matter here.
Sure.
Like, whenever you're dealing with anything relating to the living situation of people, it's so hard to make something that fits everything.
Everybody, of course.
And just the sad tragedy of it, and the thing that I think that Ryukishi has done pretty well is that, people get caught in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And that it sucks.
Yeah.
And I think that as frustrating and as tedious as that part of the arc was, and I think that that's kind of one of the more unanimous things I've seen people agree in the comments over the entire course of us doing Higurashi and Umineko. Like, there's still, in the same way that Ryukishi repeating himself is typically with a purpose, there's still a certain authenticity, as you say there, to the way that is played out.
Yes.
And, it sucks, but that's kind of, that's the world that some people actually have to live through. And it's interesting considering the discussions that we've had about, portraying things authentically as opposed to engagingly.
Yeah.
Where that kind of fits on that scale.
Yeah.
Because it's very authentic, but then it suffers engagement. So do you then drag down the authenticity to counter that, or is it more important that it is authentic because it represents people's real experiences?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, you're absolutely correct. Trying to portray something that is like real and confronting even in a way that is also engaging or entertaining to read. Like, it's so difficult to strike that balance, especially considering that Ryukishi is still he's at arc 7 in this series, but it's still like his first series. And I can't imagine he was particularly expecting to blow up this much, with his little Kodak computer, whatever the heck it was. I really appreciate, and this is something that's, I've talked about a lot, but I still really appreciate the fact that Ryukishi writes what he knows, and that he, as a social worker, he uses his art as a platform, but not in the sense that he's like, well, I've attained fame, now it's time to tell everybody about all the good things that I think they can do. But like from the beginning, all the way back in Onikakushi Hen, he was like, friendship is important, and like communication within family units is important, and like teachers should take an active role in their students' lives, like all these sorts of little bits and pieces. And Onikakushi has probably the least of this like more like teaching of lessons explicitly anyway, but it still has all those elements. It's still leading up to this is how kids are treated by the system. It's that Stranger Things sort of media where this is how kids and people like that are treated by the system, and how they need to learn to like seek power for themselves, but in the right ways, in positive ways, right? That's what Ryukishi is really like writing about through all of these stories, through Keiichi and Satoshi and Rena, like all these characters like having horrible, and Satoko should, let's not forget about her. Maybe we could talk about that too, but like watching all these characters who theoretically have so little power, they're such little tiny babby characters, but like seeking power and agency to try and change their circumstance and take control of things they don't understand and are definitely not qualified to change, right? But trying to do so in a way that is positive and learning from arc to arc. We've talked about how Keiichi's his character development from arcs 1 to 3 in particular is very interesting, because now that we know that it's like a time loop, we can actually see that he is changing, and he's like not just remembering explicit events, but like he's remembering lessons in the same way that the reader is understanding the town better. Which is great. It's one of my favorite details of the question arcs. But yeah, finally seeing, I guess, to bring it back to Minagoroshi, finally seeing the outcome of Satoko's like authentic and horrifying situation, in that she can like break free, she can get away from Teppei, with the right, encouragement and communication with her friends is really like uplifting.
Yeah, and I would like to shout out a comment made by classic hero Funk on the matter.
The true hero of this show.
By the way, welcome back, Funk. We have thoroughly missed you, and we did miss a lot of you when we've taken a few breaks here because obviously the year's been hectic for a lot of us.
Oh yeah.
But Funk, I really enjoyed the point that they made about how we kind of didn't give enough credit to that scene of Satoko turning and facing Teppei. Like, that was kind of the equivalent scene to the basement scene with Shion from back in Mayakashi, where she's actually staring down the thing that's threatening her rather than letting other people do it for her.
Yeah.
And as I said in response in a comment, like, it was kind of a shame that the arc so far had burnt us out on that moment so that we lent on Oishi more, even though it wasn't really his moment to shine. It was just a shining moment for his character.
Sure. I don't know. I mean, I've always loved that moment. Maybe I didn't express it properly when I was in the recording booth.
In fairness, it was the beginning of the last third of that painful day.
Oh my god. But no, like Satoko finally like having her moment to say, I'm not listening to you anymore, and I'm not listening to those like awful voices in my head anymore. Like, she like regains her agency in a really big way, and she finally like conquers that, like. Because, her whole arc is about her, like, believing that her pain is, like, justified, that, like, she deserves it, basically. And it's only by atoning for her sin, which is, a huge theme of Higurashi, atoning for the bad things you've done and the sins that you've carried since forever ago.
Yeah.
She finally, like, finds the strength to say, you know what, maybe I don't have to, at least not in the way that I have chosen, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's a really powerful, like, nuanced statement that Ryushi is making. And he does a lot of that. Like, you should be, attaining power, just not in the way that you murder people. Don't murder.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be, trying to atone for your sins, but not to the point where it's, like, detrimental in your life. That's unhealthy. I think that's, like, it's really cool. I really like that. I like the nuance that Ryushi feeds into his work through his characters.
Speaking of agency, I should I'll throw up the points on screen right now. I haven't got the final tally in hand, but I'll have them in the editing booth. I think we're in the lead, but if I'm recalling correctly, Ben, based on what we've done since, we might be in trouble.
It'll be fine.
The other thing I wanted to talk about before we move on in this recap, though, is Oryo.
What do you want to say?
Because
what is there to say? You tell me.
I did kind of have a few people poke me after my big rant about her in part 15, saying that, like, what are you talking about? This is like her just being is it tsundere, Ben? I don't remember
tsundere sounds right to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's all sun in front of people, and then she's dere behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's just her character archetype, and that's her
sort of
how she's played. So what's the problem with her being that way? I don't know. Maybe I just don't like the archetype, Ben. I don't really do enough
like
Japanime.
You're
does that mark me as a tsundere if I say that?
No, only if you secretly like them, you idiot.
Definitely don't secretly like them.
Okay, then that just makes you a sun.
Okay.
But I'm sure there's a dere in there somewhere, which means that you're more like the secret, like, super tsundere, the sun dere, if you will, that people will hunt for, and they'll try and make you show your dere side.
That sounds about how this audience perceives me. That seems to fit. But right. Like, it's really interesting to me because I think it was, I guess maybe for, like, the Japanime community, it's a good inside gag to have, like, this mob boss be, like, what I associate with being the teen girl archetype.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you're not wrong. Like, this is I don't know if subversion is the right term, but he's definitely playing with that archetype. But it just feeds into the whole everyone's a good guy on the inside vibe that Ryushi is going for. Like, even Oryo, the big scary mob boss lady, like, she's just doing it because she loves her town and she loves her kids and she wants everybody to be happy.
Yeah.
I do think that Ryushi with Oryo specifically goes through a couple of backflips to make her character kind of work. But it fits his, like, ethos of, like, how the town is supposed to be, that there are no, like, truly bad people. Everybody, like, does bad things for a reason, even if they're shitty reasons. And that Oryo, except for Teppei is, evil. But
I guess to some extent the problem is, and I said this back when it happened, but like I was kind of expecting Oryo to be more like Kasai's character archetype turned up to 11.
Okay.
Where like, you know, they're a bit of a sweetie, but they play tough and they get the job done.
Yeah, that's sort of what she is, or at least what she's supposed to be. She's a bit more. She leans more on the Sun side, for the most part, right?
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's what Higurashi is going for. I just don't think it's quite landed for you.
Definitely not.
Especially if you see Oryo in like other properties, like some of the side stories. She drops the act entirely. It's very strange.
Yeah, and I think especially because the last time we saw her was her going nuts was it Mayakashi?
Probably. She does that a lot in the torture pit.
Yeah, like it was just a bit of a shame that like after this big emotional catharsis fight between her and Shion, that we turn around and now she's just like an embarrassing old person.
Well, yeah, but she also dies like immediately. Like
I guess. I don't know.
In Mayakashi. That's the thing. The whole like lesson with her is that she's all bark and no bite, right? Like that's the lesson here. That's what we need to learn about old people. Is
Ryukishi saying that he thinks he could take down the Yakuza single-handedly by embarrassing them?
That sounds about right. Yeah, I mean that's just his point, right? He's saying, you know, this old lady, she's just shouting things and saying things because she wants to like maintain like authority and like keep the village running. She isn't really like doing anything because she genuinely hates anyone. Like that's kind of the message.
Yeah.
And that even like keeping like I haven't thought about this a lot, but just like stuff like keeping Shion out of the village and like the way that she handles Shion when she returns. Like it's implied that Oryo like actually knows that Shion is back in the village in Mayakashi, but she doesn't do anything because Shion hasn't done anything wrong since returning. But then, of course, as soon as Shion starts causing trouble, she's like, "You have come back to the village even though I explicitly told you not to." Even though, like, Oryo doesn't really care about that, but she needs to, like, make an example.
Yeah.
Because that's how it be.
I don't know. I guess, like, reading Mobster stories, I kind of have a very different expectation for how they're played out. And, you know, as you say, it hasn't landed for me. If it's landed for other people, so be it. That's just how, you know, subjective opinions work, you know?
Look, I mean, if you think of her more as an old sweetie who loves her children and just makes, oh my God, I feel bad. What is it that she makes in the first arc? What's the ohagi? That's the one.
That's the one.
She just makes delicious ohagi. Like, if you think of her that way, then it makes sense. But those details are buried in the overarching, like, narrative of Oryo's, she's a mob boss, which is, like, it's kind of the point, but also, you're right, it doesn't 100% land. So
I guess if anything, it's more just meant to be, like, she kind of parallels Mion and, like...
Yeah.
It's... Oh, look, Mion's the same as her grandma. This is how she'll end up when she's an old crabby lady.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. It's like, she's like... She's Uncle Mion, and she's like, I'm an old man, but she secretly is like the sweetest lady out of all of the club, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had it sort of told to us now by Rika that like...
You heard it here first. Ben dunking on Renna.
That's not true at all. I like Renna because she's a murderer first and foremost, so...
I see.
If anything, the lack of murder is a turn-off, so Mion, I'm sorry. Mion is inferior to her sister, let's be clear here. Okay. But anyway... yeah, we know that when Mion, like, when she goes nuts, she, like, doesn't hurt a fly. She's like, I'm getting the syndrome. What do I do? Should I murder someone? Probably not. And I don't know.
It seems like it'd be a bit too difficult. I think I'll just go read some books.
Pretty much. That's pretty much what happens. That's why there's no arc with Mion, like, going crazy, because it wouldn't be very interesting. It wouldn't be very fun.
The Mion arc is you reading the story in the first place.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Ben.
Oh, do you? Yeah, what?
Do you have anything to say related to Umineko at the moment? Because I think I've espoused all I have to say in this arc about Umineko.
Like, nothing that isn't related to just the overall story. Like, I feel like I have a bunch of feelings I want to say about Umineko and how it relates to Higurashi, but we kind of talked a little bit about that in the first recap.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to save, like, because obviously the ending is paramount, as one reflective surface might say.
Yeah.
But I think that we will wait for the ending of Arc 8 to discuss the ending and how it relates to Umineko. Because there are some very interesting changes that Ryukishi goes through in regards to how he likes to wrap up his stories. But maybe we'll save that for next time.
All I want to say before we close this episode out, guys, is Death of the Reader, Sunday nights 9 p.m. to SEO 107.3 here in Sydney, Australia. If you're ever interested in delving into more mystery and crime fiction, that is a series we do have here on the channel and also on your favorite podcast streaming apps, wherever they happen to be. Drop us a rating.
Get them. Give us 5 stars. Also, we are talking about Japanese murder mysteries over there right now, so
we are actually.
Get over there. Have a look.
But I think that one of the most interesting things to me over the course of this year, and particularly, as you say, getting over towards more Eastern fiction, is seeing where the cultural threads of crime and murder mystery fiction lead when it comes to the East.
Yeah.
And I think that, it has been really good to be reading Higurashi, which is very much an aspiring story alongside many of the stories that crime fiction writers aspire to.
Sure.
So, I don't really have any explicit comparisons that I want to make right here and right now because there's so many books that we've covered that it'd take forever. But, I think that one of the strongest points of Umineko for me was that it made me want to go and read more crime fiction.
Yeah.
And I can't say that Higurashi has done the same for me. Maybe that's just...
It makes me want to watch some of those old cartoons, like...
Yeah,
not
maybe.
Stranger Things, but shows like the shows that Stranger Things is trying to emulate.
But
that's what I want to watch.
I think that also might just be because we were already reading crime fiction, so like the inspiration's already spent. But if you're interested in the aspects of these stories, if you're interested in what they bring, go look up other stuff that's related to it. Go dig around because there's something so satisfying about coming around to those joining points where stories, inspirations are worn on the sleeve. Like I've just watched, a bunch of old like martial arts films and seeing how they all inspired each other and references that they have to each other. It's great.
For sure.
And
oh my God. Yes.
I would hope that Death of the Reader can afford you the same opportunity because I think that I see a lot of the people in the community for whom Ryukishi is a bit of a dead end. Like you're stuck here and you're like, this is the greatest story I've ever read. And you know what? It may remain to be so, but that doesn't mean it's the last thing you should ever read. And I hope you'd check out Death of the Reader if you're interested in finding a bit more. But maybe elsewhere, maybe become the weird horror stories stuck in small villages podcast.
Do that. Those are great. They're good stuff. I did want to say, because you brought up the idea of like stories influence each other, and I need to talk about this somewhere. I've had a similar experience with Starship Troopers. I wanted to let you know because the book of Starship Troopers inspired a film, which is actually a parody, which inspired Aliens, but the Aliens, like Alien 2. But Starship Troopers was supposed to be like a parody of Alien 1 or something. It's insane. Like the way that those two franchises like mirror off of each other is crazy pants. Go watch Starship Troopers. It's a great time.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for listening to us, Shill. I hope you've enjoyed this recap. We will be back with Matsuribayashi this time next week. Yay. I'm terrified.
It's time to party. It's the festival arc. Let's go.
That's right.
Woo! Hope you're ready for more mystery.
Next time.